Hello, everyone! Welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Kay Purcell. I'm here with an amazing special guest who we're going to get to very, very quickly. But David, to my co-host, who are we? Who are you? And what are we doing here?
Hi, I am David Lee. Welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better GM, how to be a better player, and other stuff, all with a focus on inclusivity and inclusion, so that everybody can have a good time. And while I will be upstaged by Gilmore today, I am
He's
also
not. He's
very,
not
very
actually on the
excited.
camera right now. So,
Oh,
because the
oh, that's
cropping.
right.
I mean,
Ah, the
I mean,
cropping.
Statue Gilmore is in, but actual Gilmore. Yeah. Okay. Well, continue,
I mean,
and I
both
will give
are.
everyone a peek. Everyone gets a peek at Gilmore now. Our
Okay.
third co-host.
But while I will be upstage, I am very excited for our topic today.
And I'm Kay. I'm a TTRPG performer by night, and I work in video games by day. Thank you all for joining us. Yes, Kitty. That is our third co-host, Gilmore. I have a really intense schedule right now. Please go over to @KDamnFear on Twitter to see it all. I am excited to announce. I guess this is an announce, but remind, because it's been tweeted and retweeted. Coming up on October 16th, I'm going to be over on that D'Angelo's channel playing a Halloween horror game with Candace the Magnificent and Sage Ryan. It's cool. No big deal. I'm not freaking out. It's totally cool. So yeah, it's chill. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I don't watch her on Black Dice Society and freak out. No, it's cool. Hello, Rex. Hello, Carrie. Thank you all for joining us. We are here with our very special guest, Skald. Skald, tell us a little bit about who you are and where we can find you.
Sweet. I create content for TTRPGs. I do some of my own content. I do layout work. I am available for hire if anyone's interested, but I also make little guidebooks for dungeon scenarios. Lately, I've been going around making creature stat blocks for people's pets in the community. And I just really enjoy being a part of this community. I'm also one of the co-owners of Awfully Queer Heroes, and we have many, many Kickstarters lined up coming down the pipeline, the most recent of which actually launched today, which is super exciting. And so I do some of the writing for that. I do, as of now, the layout for that as well. But kind of a mix of content creation, and I've been playing D&D and TTRPGs for years, so DMing when I can, playing when I can, all that kind of stuff. And you guys can find me probably most easily on Twitter. That's where I'm the most active. That's at Skald of Shenan. You can also, there's links to my Ko-fi page on there, and that's also where you can find Awfully Queer Heroes, which is at Awfully Q Heroes.
And yes, you can see all our Twitter handles underneath. Thank you for all of your support, everyone. I just have to say really quick before we dive in, we are just about at 300 followers on this channel, and we are 11 subscribers away from our vanity URL. So like, this community has been so awesome and so supportive. Thank you all for being a part of it. David's dropping links in the chat. Thank you all for supporting our amazing guests. And we get to talk about queer representation in TTRPGs today. And this is a topic that like is near and dear to my heart, but also very complex, because I had a very long, drawn out, and multiple come to Jesus moments with my own relationship to being queer, being in the community or not, and all that sort of things. So I am super excited to hear what you do, what your experience was, and yeah, how did you fall into like, oh, I want to do Awfully Queer Heroes? How did that start for you?
That started with the...
Actually, before I do that, I should set this up for you. Tell us what Awfully Queer Heroes is. Tell us more about that.
Right.
I can be a decent host.
Yeah, you got this. So Awfully Queer Heroes, I am not the founder of that. I was invited on to co-own and generate stuff. The original founder is Kel. And they started Awfully Queer Heroes because there was such a lack of queer representation in TTRPGs. And it was just one of those things that you couldn't really find anywhere in the mainstream games. And so it was one of those cases of, here's this thing that's missing. I'm probably not the only person who's missing it. Maybe I'll just make something. And so I came on board through initially not the Kickstarter before this one, which was the Adventures in ADHD Kickstarter, but the one before that. They were playing through the campaign and doing a podcast for that and looking for players. So it was quite literally a case of, hey, you seem like a cool person. Do you want to play D&D? So I got invited to be a part of that stream, essentially. And I was on that for a little while. I've since actually taken over as the DM for that. We've continued it not as a podcast now, but just as a sort of a social game. But I started helping out with Twitter and with posting and doing some stuff on the side, and it ended up going really, really well. And finally, Kel said, this is a lot for one person to juggle. Do you want to just split this? I was like, sure, heck yeah. So now we do the writing for the modules. We split it between the two of us. We have different strengths and weaknesses, which is nice because we balance each other out pretty well when it comes to content creation. And then I do layout. They do a lot of the social connections, getting people to stream games, stuff like that. So it was kind of just a case of, it just kind of came together because someone was like, hey, you seem kind of fun. Do you want to play D&D? And I was like, heck yeah, let's play D&D. So it was a good way to start.
That's so awesome. Yeah, David and I, not only do we co-host this, we co-DM all of our streamed campaigns.
Nice.
So it's such a relief to have someone who has other strengths than you, because I can do the charisma, I can run a game, I can do the voices, I can be creepy, but I'm like, is this in counterbalance? I don't know. David, build me a monster.
Yeah.
Fetch.
Also, it's nice when Kay has someone to go, yes, that is a brilliant idea. Like, why are you hesitating about this? Go.
Yeah, that not just the mutual support of balancing, but also the mutual kind of bigging each other up in your strengths. Because I know that a lot of creatives, definitely a lot of us folks in the TTRPG community can have pretty vicious imposter syndrome. So it's nice to have someone who can be like, no, do the thing. Do the thing. So that's fun too.
And it's also like one of the challenges of like when you're building a thing to run for your friends or to build a thing to like put out is like, I can't tell anyone this. And I like, even if you're like, I know this is good, being able to go like, hey, check out this thing, and then a person go, whoa, like that. Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Carrie Smith, stop the presses. Carrie Smith has imposter syndrome. Carrie Smith. If you're not following Carrie Smith,
literally one of the best GMs who I sat at a table, actually when I was really new to the community, the first game that I played virtually was at Carrie's table. That was the first game in the community that I ever played, was at Carrie's table, and it was one of the Deadlands, the Crossroads games. And it was also my first time playing a horror game. It was so much fun. I have never been so stressed out in a good way because she does such a good job with the storytelling. And so it was such a good first experience to just be able to play at a table like that. So yeah, one of the best storytellers and GMs that I think I've ever sat at a table for. So
let that be a lesson to you as well, is that if you feel like you're not good enough or everyone else is better or I don't know what, everyone, I don't know anyone. I mean, be Dave, but also be Dave is like, I know I can do it because I've done it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I feel like if I were in B Dave's position, I'd still be like, when are people going to figure out that I don't actually know, that I'm not actually this good at it? I feel like that would still be me.
Yeah. Quite possibly, yeah.
So Awfully Queer Heroes, great. Love the more representation, love all the modules coming out. Do you mind if I ask, what do you identify as?
So I use she, her pronouns. I identify as sapphic, so I am personally attracted to women and non-binaries. And I am currently in a relationship, but it was a one of those things where I think I didn't really find myself until well into high school. So for folks who have different ages with the school system, that would be around like 17, 18. So it definitely took a bit. And yeah, TTRPGs were a part of that. I think that there's a great sort of space for discovery and exploration and just comfortability that can be created in TTRPGs that's really important. So
there have been a few performers who I have followed, specifically some folks from Into the Motherlands, who like identified with a certain set of pronouns and then started playing, you know, a non-binary character. And then a few years later, it was like, I'm using they, them pronouns now. I'm non-binary. I'm
Yeah.
coming out as non-binary
Yeah.
because it just feels right. And it's really cool to see that progression happen for people. It's just like, yes, you go.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
something I think is really exclusive to the kind of space that TTRPGs create, where
mhm,
you actually get to become another character
mhm.
and really try it on, really try on those pronouns. When you're role playing across the table, someone is going to use those pronouns for you. And so have a chance to really see what it feels like. It's sort of like the difference between like buying something online versus actually going to a store, trying on the shoes, walking around with them, and then realizing, wow, these actually fit really dang
Yeah.
well. So,
I know a few people have kind of found that bliss through like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley was kind of like even before they got into the TTRPG space, but they're like, oh my God, someone referred to me like as this name that I'm trying out or with these pronouns. And okay, well now maybe. And it's interesting how we all kind of need these little baby steps. And what's funny is, you know, I use she, they pronouns. And I was really nervous about throwing in the they pronouns. And I think it was also an imposter syndrome thing. I'm like, I'm very femme presenting, like it or not. And so I was talking to a good friend, you know, over drinks, and I was like, I kind of want to, you know, I'm a little, maybe at the new year, I'll just kind of, I won't do it now. I'll just sprinkle it in and see. And I was really nervous about it. And, you know, I feel safe saying about this guy because he jokes about it all the time. He's like, I'm a straight white guy, right? I know exactly where I am. I support folks because I know. And he looked at me, he's like, try it on. And if you don't like it, you can take them off. And like, it was just so normal and natural to him. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm having a crisis over this. And for him, it's just normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
And it's nice to have spaces where that kind of thing is safe and it's something that you can really get comfortable with, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that because, you know, and I hope this in no way sounds like condescending or talking down to, because it is not meant in that way. I am a latecomer both to the queer community and to TTRPGs. None of these things were anywhere in my life when I was in high school. I didn't start to figure out that I was maybe even asexual, much less non-binary, until my late 20s. Because those things were just not in my life at all. But I remember, you know, once I started playing TTRPGs and I started getting a feel and I started trying on these characters, I was like, I needed this in high school so much. Like that was my first thought is, because, you know, children can be vicious. Children can be so, and I went to a school where I graduated with 20 people that I went to kindergarten with. I graduated high school with 20, like it was the same people all the way through. So there was no room for experimentation. There was no room for reinvention. There was no room for anything that you did was with you. And when you're in high school indefinitely, right? Because you know high school is going to end, but that seems so far away that. So that's part of why inclusion and teaching that, you know, because I'm old enough that Satanic Panic was still very much a part of D&D in my experience. So like the education around no, this is really useful and powerful. Yes, hail Satan. How far I've come from attending a Christian school. You know, I was like, people need this. This could really change lives if people just me as a woman, right? As a person trying to figure this out. I can't imagine being, you know, gay or trans or a person of color, right? Just being able to experiment with these things. So I like that you brought that up because it was like, oh, I felt how deeply that might have changed me and how much that might have fast-tracked things had I been given the opportunity.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm lucky in that my immediate family was very supportive, which was great because I know a lot of people don't have that. But for me, I think there really wasn't too much of a space to figure it out until the first game that I played was way back when I was 14. I'm 26 now. But back when I was about 14, it was for a friend's birthday party, and I remember playing a male character because I wanted my OC to have a crush on one of my friends' OCs who was female.
Oh.
And like I didn't put two and two together at the time, but in hindsight, it's one of those things you look back at where it's like, oh, I wanted to play a male character because I wanted this to be okay, but this was actually more about my friend's OC than it was about mine. And so it's one of those things where there's a million and one reasons why I think TTRPGs are so important for, everyone across the board. Take the Adventures in ADHD module we did with Awfully Queer Heroes. It's about looking at things. It's about making them normalized. It's about having the freedom and the safety to explore and to learn about ourselves, which I think is really important. And so, if I had my way, every school would have D&D clubs, but
Same.
wishful thinking. Yeah.
I was straight up not allowed to bring comics to school because they were evil, so D&D was straight out.
Oof, yeah.
Fair. You've been into comics this whole time, and look at how you turned out. So, but as someone who's sort of on the outside looking in, like I'm fortunate enough whereby how I was assigned at birth, I've been fine with this whole time.
Mhm.
And I knew at a very young age that I was into women, probably too young of an age. And so like I've had this sort of certainty that I've never really noticed. But the one thing I can say about inclusion, especially in not just like TV and movies, but like video games, comic books, TTRPGs, is the joy it brings people.
Mm-hmm.
Like sitting and watching someone engage with a character that is non-binary, or engage with a character who likes the same gender,
Mm-hmm.
or just people going, huh, it's okay for this person I really adore to, like, Kay and I have spoken many times about representation and about how many people first started down the road as trans because they saw Cloud in Final Fantasy VII and Pigtails.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and having watched so many people I care about discover being non-binary, discover being gay, transitioning to a more centered part of themselves, like a more authentic part of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that joy happen in people, and seeing the sort of sense of relief that they get of like, oh, this now clicks into place, this now feels right, uh, is really incredible to see. And I don't understand anyone who would want to deprive anyone else of that peace and that relief and that happiness.
Yeah.
It is great to see, like, just today, they put out the demo for Harvestalla, which is Square Enix took Rune Factory and is doing a Square Enix glow up on Rune Factory.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pick male, female, or non-binary, and all three options lead to all the same character, like body shapes and voice. Like nothing's locked behind anything, and it was like,
nice.
This feels so much better than I thought it would.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of these modules that you've written and how you've incorporated representation from ADHD to, queer representation into these modules.
Mm-hmm. The main
Please.
focus across, absolutely, my pleasure. The main focus across all of the modules that come from AQH is first and foremost queer representation. And it gets to the point where it is, I would go so far as to call it almost aggressive, where one of the issues that was coming up with a lot of other modules is it's sort of like they can be whatever sexuality you want them to be, but it was very much like, oh, they could be gay, but maybe not. And so in that same sort of wishy-washy way where it wasn't making a hard, fast line. And so a lot of the content that we make is almost a pushback. So I don't think there's a single straight cis NPC in any of the modules that we've made. And all of the NPCs are listed with their preferred gender identification, how they present, and what their sexuality is. Along with where it says, race and, alignment, all that. So there is this attempt to very aggressively say, no, these characters are queer. And
Yeah.
if the DM doesn't want to play them that way, that's fine, but it's not a might be, it's a no. They're queer. And so that's one of the biggest pieces where it comes up. Some of the spells are themed. So we have a spell that's similar to the what's the one that DMs hate? It's the tiny hut one where you can make a
Oh,
little
Liam's
shelter.
tiny hut.
We have Mabon's Twink Tavern. Which basically makes
I am never
gay
calling that spell by its actual name again. We're done.
It makes a little gay bar for you to stay in instead. Or there's a spell we have called Pride Party. There's another one called It's a Riot because Pride originally started as a riot. So it's trying to incorporate into the language of all of the spells. It's trying to incorporate it into the NPCs, and in some cases it's trying to one of the Kickstarters that we have coming out, actually Pride this coming year, so not this summer that's almost over, but next summer, is Rescue Rainbow City. And it's essentially a queer city. So you have to move through the districts of the city, and they're organized by the colors of the rainbow. So you go from red to orange to yellow, and there's all this stuff woven in there as well, but it's essentially a city for queer folk. A giant pride city, basically. So it's in the story, it's in my favorite one we're not gonna have it out for another year or two, but that one has a giant gay pirate wedding in it. So it's not just the story, it's also the NPCs, it's the spells, it's all of that, trying to really infuse it into all of the projects and make that just the running norm.
I love that.
Yeah. And so again, in some ways it is very intense because some folks have said, where's the straight cis folks in here too? And it's like, no. It's almost like not meeting in the middle ground with inclusion. It is a pushback. There's no straight cis people in here. This is just all the queer, all the gay.
Right.
And so that's kind of what's behind the creation of a lot of those modules when it comes to that kind of representation.
One of my favorite quotes from the recently departed awesome Supreme Court Justice,
Ruth Bader
forgetting
Ginsburg.
her name. Yeah.
Ruth, yeah.
Is someone asked her, how many women should be on the Supreme Court? And she was like, 9. And there was like this big gasp of like, oh my God, why would there be 9 women on the, and she's like, but there were 9 men on it.
Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly like that.
And I 100% am like, one, and I think this is why normalization is so important, at least for me, because like, I grew up in LA, West Hollywood right there, and like, outside of social conventions and biases and prejudices in my local community, it was very easy for me to mix with and be exposed to and accept other types of communities. And so there's this element of like, I'll watch a TV show and a character will be gay, a character will be trans, a character will transition. And I'm like, yeah. And it's very normal for me. But then, like, especially in talking with our guests, in talking with our players and hearing about their experiences and hearing about their pasts, like, Kay grew up in Texas. And people go, hey, when I saw this particular character at this particular time in 1994, or if you're Gen Z, like 2006, it was a big deal. And that normalization, that like, well, yeah, I mean, this person's gay, yeah, he's gay, yeah, she's gay, yes, this person is non-binary, yes, this person is ace. Like watching BoJack, it never like clocked that being ace was a weird thing because I know ace people. And I really want to see a world where not just it's accepted, but it's normal. Like it's not a big deal. Like I want to see 9 female Supreme Court justices, and it's not newsworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some of that is also understanding it. So for those folks who are allies, who identify as allies, understanding it not only from an objective perspective, but also from a subjective perspective, which did come up in some of the campaigns we ran because, for example, we had one of our tables had only one straight cis person at it. All the players and all the characters were very, very queer. And it was interesting because he used male pronouns. He and I were talking about it afterward, and he was like, yeah, it's this kind of weird feeling where it was weird to suddenly feel like the odd one out and like the one who was kind of different and strange. And then halfway through the game, I realized, holy crap, most of the people at this table, that's their experience every single day. Every single day. And he hadn't understood that until suddenly he was in that position where he was very much the minority and very much kind of on his own in that sense. And he was like, this was one of the most eye-opening games I've ever played, just because of that experience, which I think is really, really interesting and sometimes we take for granted.
And I was going to say, it also sounds like it would just be such an awesome balm for people who like are used to being that, and then suddenly, no, what do you mean everyone here is queer? What do you mean everyone here is like, I don't have to, like, oh no, just everyone is like me? Everyone has, like, I don't have, because like, David knows I love playing edgelords. I like edgelords, edge ladies, edge monarchs, right? I love the angst. So I'm absolutely often looking for, like, what can I do with a character that will make them the outsider? But there's also that wonderful experience of, like, you're in a game and, you know, you're playing the weird little goblin and you walk into an area and it's all goblins and they're not all, you know, my friend Stephanie, who was on one of our first episodes, runs her world. Goblins are cultured and they're not, you know, weird and strange, and people might not trust them, but that's because of racism, right? That's, the goblins have their own cultures and they're well spoken and they're awesome. And so suddenly walking into that space and being like, oh, my weird little character is normal here. And they get to, like, that's just such a weird, I remember when Wonder Woman came out. Now look, I'm gonna be very loud. I got some issues with Wonder Woman. It is not a perfect movie by far. But walking out of that theater, like, it was me, a black woman, like, I worked for an Israeli company at the time, so they bought us tickets because they were like, we're supporting the Israeli actress. So they just bought us tickets to go see it at the Hollywood Palladium. And so it's me, like, a couple men, a bunch of women, most of which were either queer of color. And we all walk out, and one look goes, is this what it's like to be a straight white guy? I feel like I can go punch anything. You know, we have those little moments of joy where it's like, oh, is this how the other side lives?
Yeah.
Both fortunately and unfortunately. Also, I'd like to point out, yes, there are problems with Wonder Woman, but also remember Wonder Woman was conceived by a guy who was like, I'm just going to write my fetishes. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, Wonder Woman has there's layers of problems with Wonder Woman, and there's also layers of empowerment and awesomeness with Wonder Woman, right? But you know, that's all.
I'm just saying that every
People
woman should
and our
have
lures are
a
complex.
magical rope that can subdue anyone who's problematic.
The world would be a much
And I
different
say
place.
this as occasionally problematic, especially when I've been drinking. But
Quite. Yes, right.
But no, I want to go live in Rainbow City. Please.
I just started scratching the surface of all of the content that you have on your coffee page. So much of it is free. Do you want to tell us about, like, one or two of your favorite things that you've worked on?
Honestly, I think one of the things that I've been enjoying the most lately has been making the monster stat blocks for people's pets in the community.
They're
Which,
so
if you want me to
cute.
do one for Gilmore, I will gladly do that. I've been taking
That's so
people have been sending them
sweet.
in. I've been going through rounds. Carrie's got a bunch more coming. I posted one of hers. I did
saw
all four
one
of
of
her
hers,
fur babies, so
yes.
they're all going to be coming out too. So that's been super, super fun. It's just has been a nice way to connect with people too. I've also really enjoyed getting into subclasses a little bit, and then the ideas and traps and prompts and hazards are just DM tools that I kind of throw out there when I think of it. And I don't actually make a ton of content on my coffee page. It's sort of intermittent. This is almost a year's worth of stuff that's on there now. It's once or twice a month I'll release something. The pets are a little more frequent. That's a little different. But every now and then I will release stuff when I have time, just because I have a ridiculous schedule, so I don't get a lot of time to actually, sit down and work on stuff. A lot of my time spent now is on AQH stuff, the writing for that, the formatting for that. So that's where most of my focus goes. But the big thing for me with the coffee page is, with the exception of, I think, one or two things, I think only one thing, which is a subclass compendium, everything on there I have for free. Because my thing is that I know that there are people in this community who this work is their livelihood. There are some people who do try to do indie game work as a full-time job, and that is hard. That is really, really dang hard. And for me, because I have a day job, for me it's more of a hobby. And so my biggest goal is making something that people can use that will help them in their games. I am not in it for the money, and especially because I know a lot of folks in the community are strapped for cash just because of the world that we live in. So it's just, I want to keep, all my stuff is always going to stay free. And the pocketbooks and stuff that I make, it's always going to stay free. That was what I decided when I first started making stuff, because I want to make things that people can use, not yet another thing that creators have to pay for. So yeah, and again, my own stuff is a little intermittent with how often I get around to putting stuff up there, just because there's so many other things going on. But I try to, when I have time, to just stick another one or two in there. So yeah.
Oh, that's like, this
I don't think
community
we've
has been
talked
so
to
awesome and
anyone.
so supportive. Continue,
Yeah.
David.
Yeah. I don't think we've talked to anyone who does just one thing. I
Yeah.
think one nice thing about the sort of blossoming of enthusiasm for TTRPGs is how many creative people have now joined the space. How many people who have great ideas and lots of drive can now pour their creative energies into it. We talk to people and they're like, well, you know, I do voices and I build modules and I do this and I have, this thing. And then we'll talk to someone else and they're like, I do character art and I do background art and I do map building.
Mhm.
So yeah, everybody is doing a lot of things, and Kay is excellent in sourcing awesome people because every single person has had really impressive stuff. Like I go to do my research in the days before a stream, and I'm just like, oh, that's really cool. Hey, I'm stealing this idea. Actually, I need to make a whole file of just ideas that I've stolen from our guests.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So I do the subclasses, I do the DM pocketbooks. For AQH, we have a Patreon. I do some of the maps for that as well. I do about 50% of the writing for AQH, give or take. I do almost all the monsters, stat blocks, monster creations, and then I do all the formal layout for either digital or print publishing, using Affinity. So that's kind of as far as TTRPG stuff. Oh, and then I DMR. I do, just game stuff on the side too, but that's just for fun.
So yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
do like 2 things max.
It's
Really.
just two things.
Just 1 or 2.
Oh gosh, just a few.
You really should start to hustle more, because like I hear that's what you have to do to make it in this space.
Oh man, it is a little ridiculous. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. But it's a lot of fun too. That's the thing. That's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
And like, David said, we've had some truly incredible guests, and that's because there's so many incredible people in this space. Like, it's sometimes you get someone and you're like, are they going to be interesting? And then you start talking, you're like, yes, they're fascinating. Like, it's honestly okay. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna throw just a little bit of shade here, just a little bit of shade, but I'm host, so I get to.
Yep.
Outside of the people who are like, if it's not in the book, it's canon, and also I hate all of the new canon, like, and look, you can be like 3.5 is the best because I lighted it up, but the people who are like, the game died after 3.5, it's now, whoa, like those people, those get real boring real quick. But most other people are really interesting and really fun. And also, chat, you all are awesome. We've loved all the comments. If you have questions or your own stories, your own experiences you want to throw out, please, we interact with you. I see a bunch of lurkers and we appreciate you. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to share your own stories. But yeah, I'm gonna very slightly backtrack to, like, I am just obsessed with the idea of Rainbow City. Like, completely.
Yeah. I am really, that's one. So that one, again, we're going to be launching that around Pride. That one has been so much fun. That's going to be a much larger module. I think it's going to be probably well over 100 pages. It's got the different zones of the city that you play through. It's got original creatures, monsters, mini bosses. It's got a big boss at the end. There is a BBG for that one. It's also got NPCs. It has magic items. There's a bunch of maps that go along with it. So all the city districts have different themes to them as well.
Oh.
So you go through the Silver District, which is where the graveyard is. That's kind of where you start. And then you get into Red, which is where the smiths and some of the artisans are. Orange is more the market, finer goods, textiles. Yellow, you get to where the temples are. Green is kind of the nature one, so that one's very overgrown. There's lots of trees. And it goes through all the colors of the rainbow. And it's intended to be a level 1 through 12 adventure, but you can always pick a district and just kind of start there and go. But it was a ton of fun to make, and basically your goal is to retake the queer capital city, essentially. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to that one for sure.
And I'm gonna say this too for anyone. I have not personally run a Kickstarter, but I have been part and parcel to many a Kickstarter and witness to many a Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is not where you start. Kickstarter is where you go when you are more done than you think you even need to be to run a Kickstarter. You need to have at least 80% of your stuff done. Please do not set yourself up for failure on Kickstarter.
Yeah. It's not just that, but there's so many little bits of nuances and minutia for it. So how you cross promo with people, when you choose to launch, literally even the day and the hour, how you choose to, how long you choose to run for, where you set the goal, because you can set it too low or too high. This is the one that we have going currently. Actually, we launched it this morning. We funded in just under 5 hours, but this is the 7th Kickstarter from AQH. So it's one of those things where it will get easier the more you have under your belt. And I think for people who are looking to do a Kickstarter, it's a big undertaking. Please do not underestimate it. Ask other folks who've done Kickstarters for their advice first. Make sure you know as much as you possibly can going in, because it's going to end up being bigger and there are always going to be complications that you can't anticipate. So, yeah.
So tell us about your one that launched this morning. Pretty please.
Hey, so we just launched Selanars Socketed Items. That launched this morning around 9 o'clock, which for anyone who's watching, there is a 24-hour early bird discount where you can get all of our previous content digital for a really big markdown price in addition to Selanars if you wanted to. So check it out if you haven't already. The idea of this one was, this is more kind of a side module. So this one and the next one that we're launching in, I believe, January for the Make 100 is going to be, that one's going to be a spell compendium. So these aren't actual like adventure modules. They're little side add-ons. And the whole idea with Selanars Socketed Items, it's similar to, if anyone here has played games like World of Warcraft or Diablo that have the whole idea of socketing items, it's similar to that, where
it gave me Final Fantasy VII vibes.
Yeah, you can put gems into specific items that will give you small, not massive because you didn't want to break the game, but small little perks and benefits and adaptations. So maybe using the obsidian gem here will increase your stealth on certain checks or stuff like that. Using a ruby here gives you resistance to fire or things like that. And there's this whole variety of them. It also includes runes, which are similar, but they are a little bit harder to make. And so it takes more sort of regents that you have to get together to make those. But the whole idea is runes and socketed items so that you as a character don't have to rely just on the magic items that exist in the game. You can actually essentially make your own and make it very specific to how you want to build your character. Whether that's for the people who like combat, who want to, min-max with certain traits, or that's the folks who really want to get into role play and, let's say you're playing like a Dampier and you want to have that ability to kind of move through the shadows, and you want to use the obsidian gems to really enhance the actual mechanical abilities that you have to play into that. So it works for essentially for anyone. And the queer content in this one was a little bit more minimal because it's a very utilitarian type pack, but we do have the two main characters that it is centered around. Is one, we have our spectacularly spangly gay drow Selanar the Socketeer, and then we have our sapphic lesbian half orc Gaddy, who is the runesmith.
Mm.
I
So,
love
yeah.
it.
We know how I feel about
Yeah.
daddies. No, so I clicked on it immediately. All sorts of like DM bells went off in my head of like, oh, this solves a lot, because one of the discussions Kay and I have had is itemization about um itemization for characters in different things that we're building. Stuff we
Mhm.
can't announce yet, stuff we won't be able to announce for a while. But itemization is a big conversation we've had over and over again over the past couple of months. And this, like the idea of socketing and runes and that sort of like individualized upgrading and enhancement and customization fixes a lot of issues, and it also really expands both what players can do and the type of NPCs they can work with. Be,
Absolutely.
so like in the home game that Kay is nice enough to be a part of, I already made the point of like splitting up. Like you don't just go to a blacksmith, you go to a blacksmith that specializes in weapons, a blacksmith that specializes in armor, in certain types of armor, and then you don't even go to a blacksmith for certain types of armor because it's all leather. Um, and different types of weapons and whatnot, and really just trying to diversify um, the sorts of things people can do and the interactions they can have. And so I click on the Kickstarter link, and I'm immediately like, boom, Diablo 2, Herodra Cube, I get it, perfect. This is a brilliant idea. And that just like for instance, our home game, it's a low magic world, and the production of magic items is a thing that has gone away over time. And being able to take a fighter or a rogue or someone who's just not magically imbued and being able to say, here, you can add magic elements to your things without needing to be magic. Um, is a super cool thing. And then also like I can't wait to get my copy so I can really like dig into it. And really see all the different options that I can offer to players.
Well, and
Yeah,
I like
and it's nice because you can tailor it to a lot of different settings too. And like you said, it works for the low magic because you have that production that goes into it. And for DMs who don't want to worry about potentially overpowering characters by giving them magical items, you can say, okay, go find the gems yourself. You're gonna have to build this from the bottom up. But it also gives the characters freedom too.
I was gonna say, I really love roleplay and character granularity and like building characters in very specific ways. So I have in our home game, I have a half-orc paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and she's just big and sweet and shy and queer and just a mess, just the sweetest, big, not bright girl. And her passion is there, but like I hate that anytime I add charisma, it also increases my ability to lie, right? Like no, like especially as a paladin, no, I would love if to boost her charisma and her persuasion without giving her the ability to deceive people, because that's not who she is at all. So it's nice the granularities where you can start like, okay, yes, this, for Dane's character, yeah, this will increase your stealth specifically in shadows, Mr. Shadow Dancer Rogue.
Yeah,
That
he's
works.
always gone.
Always got.
Nice.
Oh god, I'm putting a bell on him.
Yes, actually, that is. I hope he's not watching. It'll go with the cat ears. But
Good.
And also like there's like just like in real life, there's lore associated with our stuff. Like you have somebody who has like an old dilapidated pair of hiking boots, and they're like, well, those aren't useful anymore, they're trash. And it's like, they're not trash, they have sentimental value. I hiked up a mountain and, you know, proposed to my boyfriend in these
Mm-hmm.
boots. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're my, and like with Kay's character, um there's this base that's really important, and there's armor that has personal significance, and the socket and rune mechanic gives me a way of going, here, your gear can grow with your character without you having to
Mm-hmm.
go, okay, well, I'm gonna throw away this sentimental thing
Yeah.
and pick up this new thing that doesn't matter to me that has a +1 on it.
Yeah. 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 And I would say that I also like to mention, with this one in particular, so with some of our other ones, we do a mix of source stock art and commissions for the art that we use in our projects. And for this one in particular, we had some amazing art. So we had Sol Degarius, Dara, who does portraits, who did the two characters. And then for those of you who do not know him, Andy, Lost Haven Art, who's part of our little kind of the TTRPG community here. Um, he knows he has worked with DM Studios a couple times on projects. He did some fantastic art for us as well, including some actual like socketed armor. So the one that you see on the main Kickstarter page, that was his work. So it's been nice to see other people's enthusiasm and get to kind of collaborate with other people around it as well.
I love working with artists when you find an artist who just
Mm-hmm.
clicks with what you're after. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
and let me just say, like, yes, the artist who will bring your characters to life, because we've got some art that we've been sitting on that we cannot wait
Oh
to
man,
share.
ooh,
Yeah.
But like, not like, that's great, and don't get me wrong, that is wonderful. But when you find an artist who's like, here's your layout, here's your advertisement, right? When they just, you're like, I could do this and it's good, and they just punch it up, and you're like, you got exactly. Oh, it's so good. Because layouts, and you know, because you do the layouts, overlays,
Yeah.
advertisement, that is an art form in and of itself. If you are trying to do a book, don't think you can do it all yourself the first time.
Yes, please
anytime.
ask people for help, because even like so for me, I use Affinity and it is not the most user friendly. So ask people for help, because it's an experience.
And again, if you need to plug your money into getting your stuff looking nice, go into the DM's Guild, search art, search free. There is free stock art that you can use, so you don't have to spend all of your budget on pretties, because you do want some pretties and some breakups. But make sure when you do that, you read the terms and conditions and credit your artist correctly, because that's really important. The community does not forget.
Always credit your artists.
Even if you've paid, credit your artist.
I am not someone who is artistically inclined. And despite working with computers for like 25 years now professionally, there's some technical stuff that I immediately offload to Kay because she's better at it than I am. But it's important that you understand that no matter what your vision is, no matter what you're working on, whether it is a novel, a podcast, a TTRPG module and source book, a TV show, a film, a video game, none of that stuff happens in a vacuum. Like, the reason that everybody talks about Stardew Valley and that Concerned Ape made it by himself is because that is a one in gazillion um, sort of effort.
And let me say very quickly and very loudly, by the end, he was not working on it by himself. He did not finish that game by himself. He did a lot of it himself, but more people don't.
Right. So if you're into something, like, you know, if there's a podcast you're listening to, or a TTRPG actual play, like, reach out to these people and ask them about how they do what they do. Because again, we have tons of people on, and one thing that, so like, you know, I said, everybody we have on has 100 things that they're doing. But the other thing is that every person that we have on is like, hey, here's the person helping me with this. Here's the person doing such and such. I wouldn't be able to do blank if this person didn't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a team of like casting people and artists and writers and just everything that you're not good at and don't necessarily have the time for. There are other people who will help you um, actualize your dream,
Mm-hmm.
and other people's input helps grow and really expand what you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people forget Han Solo was supposed to be an alien, and somebody looked at George Lucas, Mr. Star Wars, and said, "Hey, what if we grab this carpenter and give him a cool hat and make him do it?" And sometimes you need that outside element to really grow your idea and
Mm-hmm.
to make it awesome. Like, creation is collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It really is, especially in the community here. And I think that for anyone who's trying to get into actually creating a lot of content, whether that's a Kickstarter, whether that's a module, or whatever it is, I think my three biggest pieces of advice, especially on a social media platform like the TTRPG community, are first, creativity is like breathing. So I think of it like when I'm creating, I am exhaling. When I'm playing a video game or watching a movie or reading a book or going out for a walk, I'm inhaling. You
Mm.
can't do one or the other indefinitely. And so a lot of people here, it can be really easy to get down on yourself when you're not really able to find that creative juice, but it's going to come back because you can't inhale indefinitely either. You're going to exhale again. So it's one of those things where learning to ride the ebbs and the flows and to not be hard on yourself and to understand that I mean and I don't have too much of a right to speak on this because I'm still a little failing in the department of work life balance, but trying to find
Yeah, we are.
that and something that's more sustainable is super important. Second piece of advice, don't watch the numbers, especially on Twitter.
Mm.
Numbers go up, numbers go down. It's just part of the ride. Just keep
Yeah.
going. There will always be kind of steady upward trending if you are engaging and you're working with folks. Don't let the numbers get you down. And the last thing is get everything in writing.
Mm.
And I mean this as respectfully as possible because there can be a tendency, especially in this, when we are our own bosses, to merge the lines between business relationships and social relationships. And you do not want one of those to cost you the other. So even if you really trust the people that you're working with, that's great, but get everything in writing first because that's going to give you those safety handrails to make sure that you can keep having a really positive relationship with people if there's a misunderstanding or anything like that, that you have something solid to fall back on. So I think those would be my three biggest pieces of advice for folks.
And I will say too, like even outside of the TTRPG space,
Mm.
you do not want one of those to cost you the other. Carrie Smith says with a flame.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yes, yes. And I will say too, like with the inhaling and exhaling, you know, even outside of the TTRPG space, the number of like singers and songwriters who are also painters and like all of these performers who are like a master of this one craft also have another creative hobby on the side. And often they'll get stuck, you know, I'm banging my head against the wall on this. They go over and they start painting and it unblocks something and it lets it come out. And you know, David knows I'll be trying to come up with an idea. I'll be trying to like get this thing down. What are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem? And I can't get it to happen and I can't get it to happen. And I will get in the bathtub or the shower, or I'll get angry and go to bed, and he'll get a text in the middle of it. I'm like, I may have just dropped my phone in the water, but da 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 da. Or like, I just woke up. You sometimes if you're having that block, let it go. Do something else, switch gears, and it's amazing how quickly it can unlock. Not every time. Also, you know, don't be like, okay, well, I have written one sentence. I'm now going to go to sleep and I'll wake up to everything written.
Oh man, I'm listen, Kay, I didn't need you to attack me like
I
that
was not
today,
attacking you like that.
but and for as someone who has worked with a lot of people on creative stuff, and who has, I got into a big argument, not argument. If anybody knows me, they know that I get up on my soapbox and I start ranting. And
You know. I've
Right.
never experienced that.
Um, and I went into this whole thing about how
I want chat to know we lost an entire D&D session to a rant. An entire D&D session.
ooh wee. The worst part is most of my rants, people will be like, "Hey, remember when you ranted about such and such?" And I'll just be like, "No, I don't remember it all." Um,
We do.
but I went to this whole thing about writer's block, and
Mm.
I talk about if you're a professional writer, your job is to write. So if you're not writing, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
Um, but as harsh as my opinion might be on writer's block, I do know what it's like to get stuck. Um, and like Kay said, some of the best things you could do is stop, walk away, and come back later, sleep on it, come back at it.
Mm.
And the Um, I'm a little slow today. One, because I don't know
All
why, and
good.
two, because I keep getting distracted. So, for YouTube, for the people who aren't reading chat, I said if I'm distracted, it's because I'm digging through Skald's Kofi and digging up free stuff, and I'm just like, ooh, that gives me an idea for this. And that gives me an idea for this thing that I'm working
Oh,
on.
I'm going to
And I
get
really need to
emails
like,
tonight. This is exciting.
yeah, and I really need to like focus on the interview instead of like
Play with your
I
toys
do
after, David.
appreciate this. I do appreciate the enthusiasm though. There's a bunch of free stuff, guys. Take it. Take all the stuff. Take all the stuff, please. Oh.
So,
um but
oh,
but a big part of why creation is the importance of collaboration is in creation is other people get you unstuck. Other
Mhm.
people in programming they talk about rubber duck debugging where you're like, I'm stuck on this, put the rubber ducky there, start talking to it and go, oh my god, I get it, thanks. And
Mhm.
Kay and I have done this where I've been like, hey Kay, I'm really struggling with, and I'll be talking to her about it, and I'll be like, oh okay, I got it, bye, click.
never
Kay will
mind.
have not said a word.
Like what? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks, but that's really important. So like, talk about your ideas, share your ideas. Like,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have gotten your great grandmother's like awesome blueberry tart recipe if she was like, no, no one gets to know how I do this.
Yeah.
She wrote it down, she shared it, she gave it to different people in the family. Like, every piece of creative content you've ever consumed has been somebody going, this brilliant idea I have, I'm not going to keep to myself.
Mhm.
Everybody gets to have this.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
So do share.
I'm
Yeah.
also going to say to those of you who are watching who were like, I'm thinking of stepping up and writing something, or I'm thinking of becoming a DM, or I'm like trying to work up the courage, I'm trying to get there. Um, Ideas are very precious in your head, right? And oftentimes the problem becomes as soon as you write them down, they're somehow not as good as they were in your head. That is normal. That is very much a normal creative thing. For those of you who don't know, I worked at DeviantArt for like 15 years. I was around a lot of artists, around a lot of photographers, around a lot of really talented professional people, a lot of not so talented people who are not so professional, but that's a conversation for another day. From everyone, from writers, I heard this from writers, I heard this from photographers, especially those two. Writers said you've got 10,000 bad words in you, or you've got 10,000, you got 100,000 bad words in you. Photographers said you've got 10,000 bad photos in you. The only way to get over them is to get them out. Write the words, take the pictures. If they're not good, push them aside. In there,
Mhm.
you'll find other good stuff. But until you get them out, you're going to have them in the way. So don't sit there and go, I can't do this thing until it is perfect and precious. And you know what? It might come out and it might not be good. In which case you say, you know what? Let's keep going. What is the next one better? Is the
Yeah.
next one
Yeah.
better?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
You write, Carrie says you write down ideas and come back to them later and go, what the
What
heck
is
is this?
garbage?
But
That's
I've
like,
also,
oh man. I
I've
don't know about you
also
guys,
written,
but for the like 2 a.m. ideas, when you're like, I'm gonna keep a
Ooh,
notebook
yeah.
by my bed, so I write this down, and then you get up in the morning, and you're like, I wrote 3 nonsensical words. What is this? Yeah.
But also, I've done a thing where, like, I started on a thing and I was like, you know what, this is bad, it's terrible, and I've left it sitting in a Google Doc. And then, like, 5 years later, I'm like, what is this? Oh, this is... No, it needs work, but, like, oh, this idea. So give yourself time to grow, right? Give yourself room to breathe. 2 a.m. ideas are wild. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The original Godplane, there were more than one section in that module that I was just like, I woke up, I'm like, David, is this weird or scary? He's like, yes, put it in.
Yep.
I love it.
And he also had tons of ideas for Godplane where, you know, I'll be like, hey, Kate, we could do this, and blah, 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 blah. And then she'll sit back and go, is that really a good idea? And I'll be like, no.
Yeah.
Or she'll be like,
When did I say that?
she'll
When
be
did
like,
I ever say that?
never. But more
That's
realistically,
slander on my own show.
right. Listen, everyone gets the smoke. No, but more realistically, I'll be like, okay, what if we do this, 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 and this? And she's like, you do understand that that's really, really complicated. What if we just do this? And I'm like, well, now I feel bad because that's a much better idea, but I guess we'll do that now.
Yeah.
But I only got
think that's-
there because you came at me with like 10 things, right?
That's part of, I think, collaborative work, which, again, for being with AQH and doing about 50% of the writing is a big thing, which is if you are sitting down to do something that is collaborative, if you really want other people's input, even if it's something that you just make and you really want someone to edit, if you genuinely want to make the best thing possible, you do have to distance yourself from it a little bit because we can get very set in the way that we want things to look. But having that flexibility can open all kinds of doors that you never thought were there. So, for example, when Kel and myself are writing something, sometimes one of us will be like, hey, how about this? And the other one goes, okay, but that might be an issue because of X, Y, and Z. So how about we do that, but we do it this way instead? And it's like, okay, and then this. And so it's sort of finding ways to meet in the middle with that kind of thing. And in the end, if you're collaborating in that way, you're going to make something that is more diverse and complex and full and rich than something you could make on your own. And if it is something that you make on your own that you're having someone else's input on, it's going to be better because there is that extra bit. That being said, if you are in the position of someone who is editing, or you know the DM who is DMing for you is a first-time DM, just be patient.
Yeah.
Be kind, be thoughtful, and know that this person is probably going to be a lot harder on themselves than they need to be. So there's things to keep in mind, you know, whichever side of that equation you're on.
Be kind to your DM, regardless of if it's their first one or they're a forever
Thank
DM,
your
because
DMs.
both of those are wonderful, terrible situations to be in.
Right.
And if you have not been a DM for the first time, please do it. I'm not saying you have to do it forever. I'm just saying you will have such a different understanding of the game and the characters if you just spend at least one session on that side of the screen. I am very kind to you, Sauce. You're the one who bullies me. Saucefire's up in here. Everyone's giving me the smoke tonight.
Oh gosh. I would say being a DM can make you a better player and vice versa. You know,
There
it's
is
nice to
watching
do both.
forever DMs, like watching some of the best forever DMs, like watching Brennan Lee Mulligan or Matt Mercer when they finally play a character. It's like, what is this condensed chaos? Like, you are used to running the entire world. Now that you're in charge of this one character, they could destroy everything.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Rex says, everyone should DM, if only so they can know what it's like to panic before, during, and after a session.
Yeah. Fair. But again, for people who do, if DMing is something that you genuinely want to try, make sure you've got a good table. Make sure you've got people that you do feel comfortable around. Make sure you all talk about it first. And you're like, hey guys, be patient with me. And then give it a shot. And remember, the most important thing is just to have fun. It really is just to have fun. So,
and
yeah.
As I forget, is it Matt or is it Brennan? One of the GMs that I obsessively follow is like, no one is actually going to know that you screwed up unless you tell them. Like,
fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Safe tables are absolutely the best tables. So
Which
I
I
want
need to do a very short plug right now for Carrie because
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
things that I was really struck by is going into this again, it was a horror campaign. There was a really good session 0.
Mm.
And I've played at tables where there haven't been a session 0 before. But there was a really good session 0 that was like, here are the red cards. Are you comfortable with this? Are you not? And one of the things that was introduced to me that I've actually employed since then has been anonymous surveys for players. You
Mm.
know, what are your red flags? What are you comfy with? What aren't you? What of these topics are red for you, which are yellow? And just getting a feel for who is at your table, making everyone feel safe, and most importantly, letting them know what they can expect.
Mhm.
Because I think that that's really, really important for anyone who is looking at a table to play at. Carrie sometimes posts openings for her upcoming games on her Discord. Go and check it out. You want this person as your DM. You really, really do. You really do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And as a person, as two people who ran an incredibly intense horror game, we made a really big deal about these are themes that will not be in the game, right? There and even looking at especially streamed games, because then you're not only like, okay, I say this thing that made one of my favorite performers blush, and I don't care because it's true, and David will say the ace said it, not him. You have, especially a streamed horror game, you have to treat a horror game like group sex, right? There has to be multiple check-ins, there's got to be very clear boundaries, there's got to be comfort levels, there's got to be like, you gotta really just have everything nice and buttoned up. Because TTRPGs, you make yourself vulnerable. You're exploring pieces of yourself, and especially in really intense games that can include horror, that can include like relationships, that can include even just moments in campaigns where if your character is changing classes or their patron dies or like any of these things can absolutely have a really big impact on you personally through that character. And like in horror, you can't surrender yourself to that horror unless you feel safe. So if you as a GM want the best performances out of your players, you got to make them feel really safe. They got to know. I'm always like, hey, if you guys are playing, feel free, please. I'm sorry, not you. If you all are playing, please feel free to use the chat and talk to each other. You know, hey, I will check in even in the middle of my Starfinder game, be like, my character, so those of you who don't know, my character in Starfinder is a bag of dicks. They are just an actual walking bag of dicks. They're one of the worst characters in the world. I'll be like, I am so sorry, they're about to do something. I know this is not true about your character. Please don't murder me. I love you. And then they tell a lie. For purposes in the game. But checking in is very important. But let's see. Boundaries are important in every game, but I feel especially in horror when you can feel vulnerable in more ways than one or two. It is so important. I'm not reading that, David.
No.
That's a Twitch chat. I can verb. Twitch chat exclusive. You have to join us Tuesdays at 6 p.m. for 6 p.m. Eastern for the Drew David Spice. I would like to ask, and chat, you are welcome to join in if you are comfortable. This is a question that we've actually discussed on here before, and if anyone here is not comfortable discussing it, we don't have to, but I would like to ask, and this is just a fun little game question that I like to play with folks. Most of us in some way or another are marginalized, or we have a feeling of marginalization, and when was the first time you saw your particular version of that in media? And perhaps even more importantly,
that's a really good question.
Perhaps even more importantly, when did you first see it? And then when did you see it done well? Because those
Also
are two
really
very different questions often.
Oh gosh. Oh man. And especially in the case you as someone who identifies predominantly as a lesbian, the good representation versus the representation, those are like miles apart sometimes. I would preface this by saying I before high school I was in what's called a Steiner school, which are low tech schools. They encourage kids to not spend a lot of time on technology, and instead they encourage things like reading, hand skills like woodworking, pottery, stuff like that. so for me, my introduction to the world of media was a little bit on the later side. I think the first time that I really saw it, that I remember it made an impression on me, wasn't even super overt in the way I saw it. It was, wait for it, guys. Xena, the warrior princess. Right?
An entire generation of lesbians, yes.
And I think, I'm trying to remember the context was, I think it was like a gaming type sleepover, something, birthday party, something or other. And I was kind of one of the odd ones out. And so I went downstairs and there were some folks watching Xena. And I remember watching it and being so struck by something that I couldn't put my finger on between Xena and Gabrielle and being like, what is that? And then, of course, going home and looking it up and being like, oh, this is really good. And then, of course, starting Xena and going through all of that.
That spiral.
I think that was the first time that I ever really, really encountered it. As far as how I've seen queer relationships done well, I think, and the show's a little controversial because it doesn't stick with a lot of the themes that some of the diehard fans like, but one of the shows that just queer relationships in general, I think, are done really well is Star Trek Discovery. And that's one of the new Star Trek shows. And while it has some more militaristic edges than a lot of traditional Star Trek fans like, it has a lot of queer representation. It's very normalized in the show, and as far as how the show is actually made, it has a non-binary character played by an actual non-binary actor. It has a trans character played by an actual trans actor. And so I've enjoyed going through that show and watching it just because of the way all of that is treated as so normal. It's not the token relationship. It's not this huge deal, but it's just normal. And so that, I think, that's one of my top shows as far as where I've seen a lot of queer representation done well, I think.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was a good question.
One of for people watching the YouTube video, I said the straight cis dude will say nothing, absolutely nothing about Xena Warrior Princess, and we're just gonna move on from there. But I will say, so I'll say two things about Star Trek. One, part of why I've loved Star Trek so much my whole life is because of all the concepts that Star Trek grappled with before it was mainstream to grapple with them. Like, I remember an entire episode about a whole planet full of non-binary people. And between that and watching guys walk through the halls of Star Trek wearing dresses, and I remember being young and it not clocking as being weird. And part of it is because let's remember that prejudice and hate is a learned behavior, something that's taught to people. But also, Star Trek didn't just go, hey, look at these things, these social things that are weird. It went, this can be and should be, and in an idealized utopia, are normal parts of society. And that
Deep
was
Space
a huge,
Nine
huge,
was
huge...
so ahead of its time. That show.
There's been a really good just theme of Star Trek being one of those cutting edge shows that deals with topics that are seen as controversial and mainstream, but deals with them in such a respectful way without making it a big deal. It's respectful and it's so normalizing, and I think it's part of the reason why I've always loved Star Trek. So.
And like, of course, as a dude, like if I see women on screen, I'm gonna pay attention. And
yeah, me too.
Right, like women, right? But
women.
Right. And when Kay asked you about lesbians, I was thinking about like the lesbian representation that me as a cis straight dude has seen and remembers in media. And
Mhm.
the one thing that pisses me off, whether it's dudes who are gay or women who are gay or any sort of like non-standard relationships, like polycules, um, sexless relationships, etc., is that in media they're always so goddamn messy. Like gay people aren't all this messy, and
I was a pretty messy
every
baby queer.
time,
I was a very messy
well,
baby queer.
but just like I go out to dinner in West Hollywood. I go hang out with gay people I know and trans people I know, and like they have like quiet, happy, loving, supportive relationships. And I'd
Mhm.
argue you're more likely to find um supportive relationships within those communities because there's so much isolation and there's so much like social exclusion that
Mhm.
you really have to uplift each other.
Mhm.
And to see either like lesbians written to pander to men, or um, non-standard relationships, non-traditional relationships across the board being described as this like messy, awful, catty,
Mhm.
jealousy filled, backstabbing thing is really, really off putting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had an interesting. I am really big on not gatekeeping, and
Mhm.
that's on all sorts of levels, especially because I don't know if I've told this story on this show or not. But I figured out later in my life that I was ace, and I panicked. Someone suggested, "Oh, are you asexual?" And I was like, "I no, that's weird. No, not me. Not no, no." And then like 2 years later, I was like, "Heck, yeah."
Yeah.
Sex,
Um,
gross. Which, to be
yeah.
fair, gross.
I mean, I just kept thinking I was waiting for the right person. As soon as I found the right person, it would be there at, nearly 30 years old. It's normal, right? Um, and once I finally, I was living in LA, I was in Hollywood. I'm like, yeah, this is the place. I was like, guess what? And at that age, at that time, gatekeeping was very much a thing. And I was
Mhm.
straight up told that asexuals were not part of the queer community. Um,
Wow.
because
Shoot.
asexuals were not persecuted the way that people who lived an open
Mhm.
lifestyle were. And I was like, oh, my mistake, my bad. And I
Mhm.
just saw myself out for
Yeah.
years. And so I was still like, I knew this what I was. I didn't think I could really talk about or celebrate. And also just being ace is weird because it's like I have to celebrate a non. Celebrating a non is weird.
Mhm.
Um and then a while later, and I was still being very quiet about all this. Um was it what was the CSI Baker Street? What was the really, really bad
Oh, elementary.
Elementary came out? And I'm a Sherlock Holmes nerd, and I
I
was like,
love
I
that
don't
show.
know,
It's
I hope
terrible.
it's
It's
good.
garbage.
It was really not good. And then like I'm watching it, and then Sherlock Holmes is like, I'm Ace, and I'm like, heck yeah, because like Sherlock's like the original Ace, like no question. And he's like, yeah, I'm Ace, and then like a prostitute walks out of his house, and I'm like, and again, I don't want to gatekeep anyone because there's all sorts of flavors of Ace, right? But the when Watson confronts him about it, he's all like, "Oh yeah, I'm married to my work. I'm asexual, but I hire prostitutes so I can focus and not be distracted." And I'm like, again, I'm sure there are people who that is their experience in this, but I'm like, this is very much not. And also, the show is bad. And also, like there were, I was, and then I didn't see any representation again until BoJack Horseman. of all shows,
Mm.
y'all. And I'm sitting there watching it and kind of paying it, like, you know, because Todd starts out really as a weird character and has this strange arc before he suddenly snaps into this interesting thing. And he's all like, I'm not gay. I don't know what I am. I don't know that I'm anything. And I was like,
Mhm.
what? Don't, those are my thoughts. Why are, and I like had a mini panic attack on my couch
Mhm.
because I'd never heard those thoughts before.
Mhm.
Um, so again, when we talk about representation of all kinds matter,
Mhm.
I have not played Outer Worlds yet. I intend to. I have not had the chance. Um, but no, I was like, so this is why when you talk about Rainbow City and it's like everyone is queer, like you can find
Yeah.
any flavor
Yeah.
of queer in there. It's wonderful. Also, by the way, I later found out that in like old school super early Pride, like when the riots were still happening, they used to asexuals were considered bisexuals because they were equally attracted to both sexes, just not.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when they came out, they were like taken in by bisexuals. So every ace was given an emotional support bisexual. And this
That's
is my favorite
adorable. Oh
fact
my
about the
gosh.
early queer community.
That's so cute. Oh man.
It is
Well, and
Yeah,
so
talk about
cute.
talk about another issue with representation is I see frequently people who identify as bisexual not being recognized because it's like people don't take it seriously for some reason. It's like, well, yeah, but you know, if you're a woman, you still like dudes. You know, yeah, okay, you swing both ways, but whatever. Or if they're in relationship with someone
Right.
of the opposite sex, of course they can't be bisexual, and it drives me crazy. Which is part
Or
of why I think we
when like
have
a
like
woman who's bi like starts dating a dude and they're like, well, another one bites the dust. And it's like, what the
right, yeah,
we lost one of our own
uh,
today.
more than
yeah,
once I have stood in a circle of men where they have, and including men that I know have had sex with other dudes and no one else knew. But I've stood in a circle of men where they've gone, men can't be bi. Like, if you like dudes, you're gay. The end. And it's like, you can like women too. And they're like, yeah, but you're still gay. Like if you even like look at a penis, directly to jail. And I'm like, you know, it doesn't work like you specifically, you who I have caught in bed with another dude who is married. No, it doesn't work this way.
that is ridiculous. That's and I think the thing is that with the titles and stuff that we have out there, more and more often, I think sometimes we find that nobody really fits 100% into any one title.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the best pieces of bathroom wall art that I ever saw, which people write some deep stuff on the inside of stall doors sometimes, let me tell you, it said, "Gender is a universe and we're all stars." And I was just struck by that because the whole idea is that, it's
I
not
am
a binary,
stealing
it's
that
not
from my
even
Starfinder
necessarily,
character.
yeah, it's not even necessarily a spectrum. It's just we're all out here somewhere, and maybe we're a little bit closer to one group or the other. But even if we don't identify 1000% with a specific group, that does not and should not delegitimize our identity or our expression of that identity.
And even
So,
I have drifted, like, oh, sometimes, and again, this is why it's all fluidity too. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I want to be girly. I want to wear the dresses. And then there are times it's like I've gone more than a year without ever wearing a dress because I just don't
mm-hmm,
want to deal with it.
mm-hmm.
I don't want to be perceived that way.
This may come as a shock, but I too have gone more than a year without wearing a dress.
Wow, no way.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Rex Verde says we have decades of sorting boxing in that we need to deprogram from as a culture. And yeah,
Mm-hmm,
that's,
mm-hmm,
and it does. It's so easy to stick a label on things. And
mm-hmm,
it's so difficult when labels are more flexible or when, a person, yes, label, bi. Okay, but that means you've got a foot in each bucket. And that makes it
mm-hmm,
much more difficult to understand. So, but also labels, this is a big reason we talk about we don't out people, right? Because labels
mm-hmm,
can be scary. When someone asked me
mm-hmm.
the first time, oh, are you asexual? I went, no, no. I exited the conversation because that was
Yeah.
so much more than I as a human being was ready to deal with. And that's just, I mean, I don't want to say that's just ace, because I know a number of asexuals who've since come to me and been like, I am so afraid that I might be ace. I don't know who to talk to about it. So but you know, coming out as trans, I can't imagine the pressure that comes with that. And if you're not ready to do it, you're not ready to do it. Don't kick someone out of the nest. That's not how you fix this.
Yeah.
For anyone who is looking to transition, obviously I have no personal experience with that. However, I've known many people to transition, including one particular woman who transitioned in the 80s. Um, I have not heard of anyone who's trans who doesn't have like a messy story to tell. That doesn't mean that their whole journey is messy, but if you run into a situation where you're like, hey, I am blank now, hey, I am non binary now, and you have to tell dad, or you have to tell mom, or you have to tell your significant other, um, there are going to be bumps on the road. One, that is normal. Two, that is worth it. Um, ultimately, be who you are and like who you like. Because it's better to be that person than there are kids today where they find out that dad has been gay this whole time and has just stayed because of the family unit, or mom has been gay this whole time and has just ignored that part of themselves for decades, and that no one wants to see that for you.
Yeah.
Rex says, do you only drink lemon soda or only lime soda? No, lots of flavors make things great, even if Sprite is not for you. You might not even like soda at all. And it is, again, representation is not just a queer thing. David and I, early on, when we were meeting and becoming friends, I was like, hey, there's this cartoon called The Dragon Prince. And I know, and I need you to watch it because, like, here's the thing. I told David I needed to watch The Dragon Prince because of the king and his advisor. I'm sorry. There's no way they were not boning it out in that castle. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
They just, that is exactly what was happening there. And I was so sad when they left the castle because that's where all the gay was. And I just wanted to be at that castle. But I was like, David, you got to watch this. And then, like,
sassy bottoms.
He sits down and starts watching it and is like, messages me. And he's like, I've never seen a kid's show where a character had my hair before. And it was like, that's such a simple thing.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a thing.
And I think that's part of why, at least for me, I try to get that into D&D content, because I know that feeling of seeing something normalized in that way. And that's part of why we made the ADHD module. Both myself and Kel have ADHD. It manifests very differently for both of us, but we both have it. And we want people to see that it's not this big, bad, awful thing. It's, it's something that it is normal. We are all different at the end of the day. And so I think part of why having that kind of content and representation in games, whether it is queer, whether it's around things like dyslexia or ADHD, whether it's around culture, whatever it is, having that kind of representation gives all of us a chance to see ourselves in a character, to see that and have that aha moment where it's like, oh my gosh, this is that quiet little voice that's been at the back of my mind that I haven't been able to identify. And being able to step into that can be such a cathartic and fulfilling feeling, because it's almost like, finding that missing piece in your own sense of identity, which I think is part of why it's so, so very important.
It's funny because I was literally at lunch today talking to a coworker about I have a weird mild form of dyslexia that manifests in weird ways, but like Monty Python always made sense to me. It wasn't as weird as other people thought it was. A lot of the humor just made sense. And then I found out that most of the Pythons are dyslexic. And it was like, and they consulted on The Labyrinth. They consulted on the original screenplay of The Labyrinth. And I'm like, The Labyrinth makes so much sense to me. Like, and then I started researching, like, how do dyslexic minds work? We turn things over. We put things in interesting different ways that most people don't make the connections we do. And it was like, oh, that's a part of me.
Yeah.
That's part of this.
And there's something about seeing that. I know that for example, I just finished watching with my partner the second season of Star Trek Discovery, and when I was younger going through, I always loved the character of Spock because I really liked the work that Leonard Nimoy did in his life. So because I had such a respect for the person, I had a respect for the character, and I always, enjoyed the character and watched it all the way through. Even the new films with Zachary Quinto, which I love that they chose an actor who was out as gay to play a character that I loved. That was huge. And then in this most recent one, finishing the season, we find out in this earlier season that Spock has dyslexia, which I also have. I have a very visual form of it. And so I remember sitting on the couch crying because it was the first time, and it was this character that I loved, and it was like, oh my gosh.
He's one of
so
us.
to be able to have that experience and to make that experience for people and have a space where they can have that, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing is sitting down with something that you love, like a TTRPG, and going, where am I in this? I can't find myself in this. Where am I in this? So finding ways to get that into these mediums, I think, is super, super important.
And the fact that it doesn't have to be a huge world-altering thing. It could just be like, oh no, this is, I remember, I'm Ace. Spoilers for campaign 2 of Mighty Nine. We get Caduceus along, and Caduceus is running around doing his thing. I love Caduceus so much. If they put out a Caduceus figure, he would live back here with my Molly. And then Matt brings in this big badass butcher woman who's hitting on Caduceus very obviously, and he's just not picking up what she's putting down. And they get out and they're like, Caduceus, she was into you. And he's like, what? Oh no, I don't need that. You all are entertaining it. Nah, that's not for me. And it was this moment of like, this character I love is Ace, and it's in a show I love, and it's by my favorite player, and it never came up again. But that was all I needed. It was like, one of us, this makes sense.
One thing that I think is important with the work of inclusion is, as someone who grew up with interests that were outside of what traditional interests of my peers were, like, I was into anime, I was into video games, yada yada. I have a long history of having to elbow a space for myself at the table. And as anyone who knows me will report, I have a big personality. I have no problem throwing my weight around, figuratively or literally. But we should live in a world where you don't have to do that in order to be yourself. And so the normalization that we see is really important, because you should not need to be, neurodivergent or non-binary or any of the other things that are seen as non-traditional in a loud, forceful way. You should be able to be who you are and be comfortable with who you are and be comfortable bringing that person to everything that you love without having to forcibly make room for yourself.
Without
so
having to
I
answer
hope
why.
that, right. And so I really hope that as a result of all of our work, not just Kay and I, but everyone that we bring on, is that we make a space and we make this hobby and this interest that we all love into something where someone who doesn't have the sort of personality that I have, who isn't as confrontational as I am, doesn't need to force themselves to be that person in order to participate.
And people who can come in and bring their whole selves and discover something about themselves in the journey, that is magical as well. So we have kept you here for quite a while. So chat, you've been wonderful. If you have any closing questions or thoughts, please throw them out now. Skald, tell us again who you are. We're going to be throwing links in chat, so don't feel like you have to do all that. Tell us who you are. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us what you do.
I go by Skald of Shenanigans. I am mostly active on Twitter at Skald of Shenan. I make all sorts of free D&D content, whether that's stat blocks or subclasses or D&D content, DM tips, traps, hazards, all those kinds of things. I am a co-creator with Awfully Queer Heroes. I do a lot of the writing and the layout for all of our final projects and that stuff as well. Check out our latest Kickstarter. And honestly, like, come say hi on Twitter. Shoot me a DM. I love chatting with people about TTRPGs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, come say hi. Thank you so much for watching. And for you guys, thank you so much for having me on the show. Honestly, I've loved talking with both of you. So thank you so very much for having me. This was an absolute blast.
It was so much fun. I loved all of our chats. And no, Carrie, you've been wonderful.
Carrie, you've been amazing in chat.
Thank you so much,
Major
Rex.
kudos to Carrie.
David, after you finish your typing, I see the concentration. Who are you? And what do we do in here today?
Hi, I'm David Lee, and this is the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. Ignore anything Saucefire says. Where we work on where we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better GM, how to be a better player, and hopefully point you in the direction of creators that you will love and that have a lot of important things to communicate to all of us, especially me, with a focus on inclusion and intersectionality. Oh man, that was a hard brain fart. But where we focus on inclusion and intersectionality so that all of us can have a good time. Every single one of you can have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I am Kay. I have been your other co-host. Oh, we should bring out third co-host.
Third co-host, Gilmore.
And this is Gilmore. He's been a good nap cat in the corner. Now that he's started to sleep up there, I think we might have to incorporate a cat cam soon. Because, you know, that is a vital part of a stream. This is Gilmore,
So
my co-host. Jareth is somewhere else, but Gilmore's the camera cat. I do a lot of stuff. You can find me coming up on the 26th. It'll be the last episode of the Halls of the Mad King horror game over at Red Hair Inn, where I play the most chaotic changeling. I've never played a character this chaotic. Yes, he's getting very big. It's unfair. He's only 6 months, so he's gonna at least double this. I'm here every Tuesday with David. Coming up, not this Wednesday. Oh no, coming up, gosh, what is it? Hold on, look at the calendar. Tomorrow, new episode of the Emergency Power Podcast. That is a homebrew Starfinder game where I play just the worst character in the world. They are a non-binary disaster queer in outer space who is just wonderful. And that's great. And then coming up on the 22nd, I will be over at Saucefire's channel playing Trixie, the raccoon artillerist and black powder enthusiast. It's the finale. Some bad stuff just went down. It's going to be fine, I'm sure. I don't think Sauce is going to kill my family. He keeps threatening to. And we've got something coming soon. Announced this week, hopefully. And last but not least, find me over on D'Angelo's channel on the 16th of October for a horror game where I'm playing with some of my favorite people. You say that. Literal question. Yeah. You say threat, I say literal question. You know, I'm sure it's fine. Everything always works out fine for Trixie. Thank you so much, Skald. You just have so much amazing information. So many. I can't wait to see how your items make it into my home game because I know
that's absolutely happening.
Roxy is going to be finding some of this. It's going to be so much fun. We'll report back.
Items or some cool shit, tell me all about it. I want to hear what you build.
Oh, absolutely.
I am, as Sauce will attest, I am absolutely not a chaos gremlin. I am not a menace to society. I do not take items or spells and turn them against my GM. In the worst way, David has never had to be a talking horse.
Two talking horses at the same time.
At the same time.
Yes.
So let's see. We are going to wrap this up. Any final thoughts before we go? Anything you would like to say?
Honestly, just thank you. Thanks to all the folks who caught the stream. And just, I am so grateful to be a part of this amazing community. There's a lot of really incredible people out there doing a lot of really amazing stuff. So if you have some time, check it out. Even small gestures of support, even dropping a single comment goes a lot to making someone's day. It really
does.
It really, really does. And again, just thank you both so much for having me on here. I'm really glad I got a chance to chat with both of you. That was absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much. Good luck with hitting those subscriber goals.
Thank you.
And yeah, may the channel continue to grow.
Thank you so much. And yes, again, as you said earlier, don't pay, like, celebrate the wins, but don't pay too much attention to the numbers. Critical Bard is playing Dead by Daylight, so let's go see CB. And thank you all for hanging out. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was inspired by Kay's fanfiction. Look, you're the one who tried to give my character a chainsaw. Thank you so much. Thank you, Skald. Thank you, chat. You've been wonderful. We will see you next week. Thank you so much.